Okay. So, as Steve mentioned, I'm Kelsey Bradshaw, the newsletter editor over at CityCast, and I was hoping everyone here could introduce themselves real quick. Tell us about yourselves, where you work, and maybe a short story about a positive, memorable employee experience you've had in your career. Sure.
Hey everybody, David Atkinson. I'm the Senior Vice President, Chief People Officer for TriHealth, which is an integrated health system, hospital system in Cincinnati. We've got about 15,000 team members, been there for about 2 years. Was formerly the region Chief HR Officer in Chicago for Advocate Health, which is the third largest health system in the country. And then before that, Atrium Healthcare, which is the largest employer in the state of North Carolina. So positive, when I went to Chicago after the merger, the team did a great job of listening to understand me and what I'm all about, and they did just a phenomenal job. I had 2 states, so I had Illinois and out of Chicago, and then Wisconsin and Milwaukee. They did a great job of just creating team member events. I had about 380 HR team members, and they split them up and did games, found out about me, turned that into a game, created just a wonderful experience to welcome me. And the most memorable thing was having to be in Wisconsin and try to pronounce Wisconsin city names and town names, which I butchered 100%. But it was just a wonderful welcoming event.
Amazing. Stephanie.
Can you all hear me okay? Okay, cool. Hi, I am Stephanie Murphy. I am the Vice President of People, Listening, and Experience at United Health Group. I have been there for about 2 years now. So I lead everything from our surveys and employee listening and passive listening to how do we then take that and drive positive employee experiences using user research and also just experience design as well. I am based here in Austin, Texas, and I previously worked at Dell Technologies for about 9 years. My positive experience is from Dell. So I had my son super young. I was an undergrad, and I was looking for jobs, and I found an internship right after grad school at Dell. I was super excited. I'm from Louisiana, so I was gonna move. Me and my son were gonna go to Texas, and we're gonna spend our summer here for the internship. I got a call from the recruiter, and the recruiter said that you had to have a roommate. And so I was like, okay, well, I didn't want to leave my son. I didn't have anywhere to bring him. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really want to take this internship. And how will I provide and how will I make sure he's okay? And so I called her back afterwards. And I was like, look, to be honest, I planned on bringing my son on this internship. And she was like, oh, no problem. And she immediately got me my own apartment. They had a room for my son. They had stuff in the room for him. They decorated it with his favorite hockey team, and it was the sweetest thing. So I was really appreciative of that.
That's amazing. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah. So I don't know how I'm going to beat an employee experience like that. You really should have gone last. But anyway, no, it's great to see you all today. I'm William Suarez, so I'm the Global Vice President for HR Operations at Circana. We're in the market data analytics space, so similar to Nielsen, if you're familiar with Nielsen, one of our bigger competitors. We are a global company, about 10,000 people. I'm relatively new to the organization, so I've only been there for about 10 months. Prior to that, I worked at a company called Dematic for about 7 years in the HR ops and tech space, but also in the HR business partner space as well. So a fairly broad portfolio when it comes to all things HR. Employee experience, again, I feel like you kind of took the cake with that, but I think just from a personal level, it's always challenging to onboard, ramp up, immerse new talent into your own teams. It's even worse when you are also fairly brand new and you are trying to basically blind leading the blind. You know, you don't necessarily know the path forward, so you're trying to figure out what's going to be the most impactful experience for my team members who are really looking to me, right, to ensure that their onboarding, their immersion is going to set them up for success at the end of the day. It really just takes dialogue, right? So, you know, I had 2 people that joined about 3 months ago. They joined when I was only 6 months into my own role, and I'm like, hey, how do I work with you to make sure that you're set up for success? Here's all that I know, but what are the questions that I still have today that would be super helpful if I was able to answer that? And so it's kind of reflecting on your own experience, where were those gaps, and really working with them so that they could maybe learn vicariously through where I didn't necessarily have the best setup for success coming in. You know, it worked really well. You know, both are super excited to still be here. I'm like, I don't know what we did differently, but I feel like it was the right step forward. And really just that empowerment, right, of just letting them kind of guide that path forward of what do you want to learn more about, what do you want to do more of, who do you need to build as part of your stakeholder group and core customer group so that you feel like you have the right connections here to get you started. So.
Amazing. My name is Joe Phillips. I'm the global head of learning and development at WISE, where we are building a better way to move and manage the world's money. So if you are traveling abroad or going to Europe or Asia, download WISE. I get zero commission, but it's a wonderful product for allowing you to have multiple currencies and really immerse yourself in the experiences. I've been at WISE for 2 years, and I think part of what makes us really unique and special is the fact that we are operating in 11 different countries, and half of WISErs, which is what we call our employees, live in a country or work in a country that they weren't, or that they've relocated into. And so my team, what we do is we cover everything from company onboarding, or your first days at WISE, all the way through leadership development, AI upskilling, retention, team building, everything in the middle. My best employee experience probably started at WISE, where I had just began to go to each of our offices around the world, and I got 11 separate onboarding programs delivered to me as a new hire, which was very time consuming, but they were all very unique in the sense that they were very much immersed in the local culture. So, from mushroom picking in Estonian forests to paprika cooking classes in Budapest, they were each very unique to the culture, and that was probably the most enriching and rewarding experience I've had in an onboarding program. Very expensive and time-consuming, so we'll adjust it slightly, but it was a wonderful immersion into the international forum that WISE is.
Excellent. Hi, my name is Emily Johns. I am also a global head of learning and development. I'm also at a fintech company. I am at PayPal, so I don't know. And we actually compete, so there you go.
And we share a building.
And we share a building. We just met today. But so I've been with PayPal for 5 months. I think you know what PayPal is. I bet you didn't know that PayPal also owns Venmo, which I bet you use all the time to tip your hairdresser and nail tech and babysitter. So as I said, I've been at PayPal for 5 months. I was with Nestle for 20 years before that, so completely different industry, but always in the learning and development space. And I try to think of an experience and a positive employee experience, and I couldn't think of an experience. But what I started to realize was every time I have a positive, my positive memories of every time I've been at work have had some things in common. One of them is that I feel like I belong. Either I belong in the meeting, I belong at the lunch table, I belong in the conversation. That something that I'm saying and I'm contributing, I belong there. And the second one is I feel seen. So not only do I belong, but what I'm saying is respected and taken seriously. So I think there's a lot that we can do from an employee experience perspective, but creating that environment where somebody belongs and feels seen is the intangible that actually for me has been what's so important about my employee experience.
I really could not agree more with that. All of you should run a newspaper because every time I've started a newspaper, the employee onboarding experience is just kind of like free notebooks. So anyway, I think you should all own a newspaper. David, we're going to go to you first. You've talked a lot about the importance of onboarding and ensuring that people feel connected right away. Can you talk about that a little bit and like what the key elements of those first days and weeks are like?
Yeah, I'll share in the context of some of the challenges that we had at TriHealth. So when I joined, we had a pretty significant issue to resolve. We had about 8% of our open position, or our open positions represented about 8% of our total employee count. So with about 14,000 employees at the time, we had about 1,200 open positions, which was pretty challenging. We had 36.5% new hire turnover. We had all turnover, which is about 21%. So there's a big burning platform around that, and what we understood was that there was a lot of the front-end experience that was just missing. We ultimately had to make some changes in our talent acquisition department and function just to make sure, not the people per se, but the process, the engine itself. We actually started the journey, pushed the journey. We know that the experience starts before they even get to the door. We made sure that the story that we told about the role, the story that we told about the organization was conducive to who we are as an organization. We would bundle up whenever we made offers and they accepted, we would bundle up feedback from the team that they were joining. We would push them out to the individual, the candidate, so that they started to feel the love, they started to feel the excitement. They got an ambassador from the first day that met them at their orientation. We made sure that our orientation was super exciting and certainly mission-filled. As a hospital system, we're incredibly ingrained in the community. We're very focused on our mission of being seen, heard, and healed. So the sense of purpose is really important. Everybody gets an ambassador from top of the organization to the front line of the organization. We connect them to a career coach, not necessarily to establish a career journey right off the bat. I don't think that's really productive. Some roles can be, but we just want them to know that there's a journey. There's this aperture in healthcare that it's one organization, 35, 40 careers was really important. And then the more unique thing that we did, and I kind of co-authored this with one of our board members. If you're in healthcare, anybody in hospital systems, okay, you know Quint Studer. So Quint Studer's an icon. He's on our board. What we figured out is there's an emotional journey, so it's nothing really that revolutionary, but everybody goes through an emotional journey. When you start something new, it's excitement, doubt, learning, and mastery. We do a lot to drive excitement. We don't talk at all about doubt. And so we actually created a learning platform that was right off the bat, that we called out doubt and we acknowledged it, we normalized it, we gave permission to it and said, you're going to feel this. You're going to go through this. Everybody's on their own time cycle. But we just made that very transparent. We again connected the ambassador, we connected our HR teams, the leaders, the team members themselves, and just kind of rallied around the ball around that. So, our onboarding surveys started within 2 weeks. They used to start 30 days or 45 days. We pushed them all the way up to 2 weeks. The research shows that someone who's looking to leave the organization starts within 2 weeks if they're not getting that experience. So we just kind of pushed everything upstream and said, look, we're going to crowd the ball. We're going to bring a lot of resources and connections to the front end of this experience so that we can just just create roots as quickly as possible.
And did it work?
So our new hire turnover has gone from 36.5% to under 25 within 12 months. Within 18 months, our overall turnover went from north of 20% to under 13. And we've now gone from top quartile engagement to top decile engagement.
Wow, that's awesome. Does anyone have anything else to add before I move on, Joe?
Yeah, no, I think you really good points around doubt, because I think the thing that we started to talk about at WISE was the element of, yes, they need to learn the job to be productive quickly. That's what hiring managers were expecting. But the social onboarding was as important as anything else. The gravity of a life change of starting a new job and meeting people that you're going to be spending so much time with, we needed to figure out a mechanism to drive that. And I think with such distributed teams all across the globe, sometimes the hiring manager wasn't even in that same location. Maybe that recruiter was in a different location. So we needed familiar faces, and we needed to create infrastructure to present those familiar faces to people so that they had that, the curve of starting a new job and all this change that they were going through was as flat as we could possibly make it. And the first thing that it started with was that smile at the door. So we didn't want to undervalue that. And what we've seen is engagement surveys for new hires are around 94% for WISE, which, yes, they're new, so they'll fill out anything you ask them to. But I think with the veracity of highlighting and calling out some of those things has been a great success for us with the new hire group.
Well, and it sounds like it's a lot about listening, like Emily, like what you were saying, how people want to be heard. Stephanie, can you talk about listening to candidates and employees and what that's like?
Yeah, I think at United Health, we really feel like the employee experience starts with listening. You don't understand what's broken, where there needs to be improvement, or where there's strengths until you talk and have those conversations. And not just a survey. So we've really, in the last 2 years, worked towards expanding beyond just surveys. Yes, we still do candidate and onboarding surveys. We still do engagement surveys. But how else can we really have dialogue and ongoing dialogue with our people? So we do a lot of passive listening now. So things that are being said on our internal channels, things that are being said on external channels, pulling all that in, because we have 400,000 employees. A lot of people think of United Health Group and they only think of insurance. We also have, that's the United Healthcare side. We also have the Optum side, which is clinics and a lot of doctors, and we have pharmacies. So Optum Rx has tons of pharmacists. And so we have pretty much every industry you can think of in that 400,000 people. And so how do we make sure we have our ear to the ground all the time? And with 400,000 people, they're always talking. And so how do we make sure we're picking up all the signals on a regular basis? And so a big part of that is the passive listening. So what are they saying when we're not asking them things? Other pieces is we have what we call our always on program. We put QR codes across all of our site locations. So in even a pharmacy with one pharmacist and two pharm techs, there's a QR code in the break room where people can go scan that QR code and share feedback at any point in time. This also helps with identifying issues where there might be quality issues or breakdowns. And so we have those across even our main offices and headquarters. There's by the coffee shops, there's little QR codes where people can share feedback all the time with us. Listening sessions has been a big thing for us. So getting our leaders in front of our people. So we're, again, back to the conversation. So we put together toolkits where all 40,000 of our leaders can sit down, have a conversation, have an AI note taker in that conversation, and then provide summaries of what that feedback was in those conversations with their people. So helping them have the questions to ask, know how to ask, and walking them through that phase, and then collecting all the notes so that we understand the themes of what's being said in those listening sessions. So really just thinking through all the different ways that we can listen. We also don't just do like our census survey twice a year. We do check-ins and pulses throughout the year. So there's this ongoing thread of data of like what's working, what's not, all throughout the entire year. We're to the point where we produce a weekly report of here's the top themes of what our people are talking about this week. And that goes to our CEO. So we're really proud of like how good we're listening. It's just a matter of taking those themes and really driving action from it.
Well, and it sounds like, too, you're switching up the listening methods a lot. Can you talk about the importance of that?
Yeah, so because we have, did I go out? Can
There you
hear
go.
me?
You're
Okay.
back.
I'm like, they told me to keep my head this way and I turned. Because again, we have so many different industries, from people that are on the floor with patients to people that are in tech and building code all day. It's so important to have all those different channels because people give feedback in different ways. Not everyone wants to sit down and take a 50-question survey. Sometimes people just want to have a dialogue. Some people want to just scan something and tell you something really quick. So providing all these different mechanisms and channels allows for people with diverse ways of providing feedback to really share that information with us on a regular basis.
Do you guys have any fun listening techniques that you want to share before I move on? Anybody?
The only thing I would add is not a listening technique. You're clearly an expert in that. But one of the things that I think can trip people up is the responding after you've been listened to. And so I think a lot of companies do a really good job of listening and surveying and seeing all this data. And then we get the data, and then, you know, we're supposed to do something with it. And so how do we act on it, and how do we come back? It's especially hard when the sentiment is very negative about something that is not going to change. So we've heard you, and you're still coming back to the office. And that can be really tricky. And what I've found, in my experience, I think that's where leaders just shy away and are like, I just don't want to talk about it. And so then people have shared, they felt listened to, and then nothing happens, and it can be very demotivating. So that feedback loop is so important.
Oh, I love that. And sorry, one comment on that. One of the things we've started to do because of that, because we listen so much, and we really do try, like we send out monthly emails closing the loop and saying, here's what we did with your feedback. But the other thing we do is crowdsourcing activities. So we have a crowdsourcing tool where it's like, hey, you told us that you really hate this return to office thing. Give us solutions to make it better for you. And we put it back into the employees' hands. And then they can go in and they can vote for each other's ideas. And then at the end of the activity, we have like, here are the top 5 ideas employees told us that would help fix this. Because if it's not going to change, like, you tell us what we should do to make it better.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, well, that was my next question. We're going to talk about follow-up with William. But maybe we can talk about like how to overcome obstacles and like breaking out of old cycles, like shaking up the status quo when you're doing follow-up. Like how do you go about that?
Well, I think, no, I mean, it's fine to trip on questions. I mean, these are all naturally connected, right? So
Right.
I feel like, you know, we're getting at that importance of, you started with responding, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think a lot of leaders struggle with feedback, whether it's coming in the form of a survey or a roundtable, a one-on-one. you have to anticipate what you might get from your employees, right? Because you have to be able to have almost a canned response of, here's what I say when I really don't know, especially if it's something that I don't know if we can change it. I don't know how long it will take to change this. It may not necessarily be a business priority yet. It doesn't mean it's not important, but we all have to prioritize kind of what actions, what activities are taking place. So after you do your initial response, it's that structure of how do we continue to make sure that we're addressing that feedback as it comes in. Thinking about employee experience surveys or engagement surveys, which I think a lot of companies call them still, that's a one point in time feedback, right? And I could speak from experience that there was a time a few years ago where I was pretty miserable, right? Like I was not necessarily in the best headspace. I had more work that I could handle. We had turnover like crazy within the organization. It was, I think during 2022 when the market was resetting and everybody was on edge during that period of time. But we rolled out our engagement survey at that time, and I was like, what a stupid thing to do. I was like, I am not excited about this.
You had things to say?
I had a lot to say. I was so vocal. But guess what? About a month later, everything that I probably put in that survey, I was like, this isn't how I feel today. Because, it was that moment, it was that affect that I had at that point in time. And so when you think about what else needs to be followed up, opinions change. Engagement surveys are only really relevant for about a quarter after you take them. After that, you have to continue pulsing conversations, whether it's in the form of roundtables, which are harder to coordinate, but I think this day and age, technology really helps. You can get people into calls virtually and say, hey, these are some areas that we've been focusing on. Are these still the right things that we should be doing? Because sometimes the answer is, you know what, we don't care about this as much anymore. What we do care about is maybe change fatigue, right? Which I think is really pertinent in a lot of organizations today. There's so much being thrown at us, especially in the technology space. AI being probably the biggest disruptor that I can think of in recent history. So it's just getting smart with, what are the different forums that you can take to get that feedback, how you can continue to follow up. And then most importantly, be transparent about what you can actually do, because there's nothing worse than feedback falling on dead ears and saying, hey, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about this. If you're not really going to do anything about it, employees are generally going to be more, I guess they're going to relate to you better, right? If you just say, hey, this can't be a priority yet because we're working on some of these areas that are more in our control. That's not telling them no, that's just telling them not yet. And let's reassess this when we have a little bit more bandwidth to do so.
You guys good to move on? Okay,
This
cool.
is also William's real hair and real hair color.
Yes, it's his real hair color.
I'm not jealous at all.
We're all very upset.
Thank you for that.
Emily, tell us about your hair. No, you.
My real hair too.
Oh my God, it's Emily's real hair. Okay. You've talked about how you're focused on transforming how employees are engaging with learning. Why is that? Why are we changing things?
Yeah, so I'll tell you at PayPal, and like with every company, COVID was quite a disruptor. It was a disruptor in so many different ways, and it changed the way we thought about things like learning. And what we saw happen at PayPal was learning became a 1-hour webinar that was required. And so learning became compliance training that happens every year. And in the fintech company, if you guys are there, I've just joined one. It's about 40 hours a year. It's a lot of compliance training. Or these webinars. And so when I joined and I started to explore and try to understand what was happening from learning, I did a lot of listening. I talked to about 45 different leaders.
It's okay. It's okay.
No. I was gesticulating too much. I'm getting very passionate about this. I'll try to calm down now. I talked to a lot of leaders about what they were finding, and they said that, first of all, they felt the pressure of the jobs were so much that they didn't have time to learn. And they said, please, if you have learning, we need to do it. Can you make it required so everyone will know it's okay? And what that says to me is a lot. There's a lot of messages in that. One of the messages is we've lost sight of what it means to be a learning culture. So when we talk about learning, it is being inquisitive, it is asking questions, it is realizing that when I learn a new skill, like how to build an AI agent, I'm actually being productive because I will apply that skill later on. So that learning is important to my job. So when we look at transforming, there's a couple of different things that we're doing. The first thing we're doing is really revamping our go-to-market. How do people see how learning happens? Learning is not just a webinar, first of all. Learning is not just a workshop. I know in the last panel she talked about workshops, but learning is in the flow of work. Learning is practicing. Learning is mentor groups and peer coaching circles. Learning is reading a book. Learning is presenting on a panel. We are all learning right now. So all of these different things that we are doing, we are learning and building our skills. So how do we help to revamp that and show how this happens? How do we reset on skills? Here's the skills that are required, but really show that when we learn, we are engaged. We're tapping into a different part of our brains. At PayPal, one thing that did survive is something called Learnathon. And so while learning went to a 1-hour webinar and compliance training, we did keep Learnathon, which was an amazing employee engagement event. It happens once a year, sometimes twice a year. It is 3 or 4 days of workshops and learning that happens all over the world. So what our largest populations in the US, second largest is in India, but we have different speakers. We brought in keynotes. We had in-person sessions, virtual sessions, a fantastic way to get people to stop. I will say this last year, it was amazing. We got amazing feedback. We had a 70% no-show rate though. So we still are fighting against people taking a break. And so when we look at the challenges that we're facing, if you build it, they will come. We're building it, but we also need to get them to come. We need people to understand how critical building skills and learning is and how important that is to the employee experience.
Do y'all have any kind of learnathons at your companies that you can talk about, or what y'all do?
Yeah, I think one thing we're trying to do is balance, especially in fintech. As Emily was saying, you have training you have to do, then there's training you get to do, and then there's training you want to do. And I think what we have tried to understand is training for the average employee just doing their work. Training is every piece of information they're getting. And so how do we balance carrot and stick, right? The things you have to do with the things you want to do. We're trialing something at the moment actually around gamifying it and adding some incentive. So, if we think about, we have a partnership with LinkedIn Learning, and one of the things that we want to do is reward people who are actively going into those platforms and spending time with it. Reward can mean a lot of different things. For us, to avoid tax loopholes and stuff, it's not always financial, and in most cases, it is experiential. So it might be something like lunch with the chief people officer, or the opportunity to go and work in a different office for a little while, something along those lines, or even just recognition in big channels, or understanding that recognition is a way to validate that extra effort. So you have to get really creative, because training can just mean one thing, but we all know that learning means a lot of different things.
Well, and how, Joe, do you help people, your employees, stay ahead of the curve? Because things are changing so quickly, especially in the tech world.
Yeah, you have to try and flatten it as best you can. I think that's the thing. And I was having a conversation with our chief people officer, last week around this concept of, the last thing I learned was how to change a light fixture in my home. The way I went about that, I went to YouTube, I watched that same video from 5 years ago 600 times, paused, stopped, everything. It took me like 4 hours, and the video was like 30 seconds, so you can see how frustrated I got. But what we tried to understand is we're asking our teams to change how they learn once they get to work for topics, like, let's be honest, that they're not very passionate about. So how do we combat that? Well, let's maybe try and give them those topics in the style that they want. So we're getting very experimental, which is having some good and some maybe not so good results. But things like, is anybody a fan of like streaming, video game streaming, or anything like that? It's a hugely popular, highly interactive venue for just watching things. So now we have subject matter experts stream certain things to Wisers that they can just jump in, watch, contribute, move on. Other things like giving people options. So for our compliance training, we actually give them an option to read, to watch, to listen, and then to interact. And then they get to choose. So we want to create that diversity, but really the aim of what we're trying to do is flatten the curve on how they learn by actually trying to bridge the gap between how they learn at home and how they learn in the workplace. Some good results so far, but I think it is a lot of risk for us to say, hey, you normally would get this in a slide deck, traditional slide deck, somebody presenting it. Now, hey, just record yourself talking about this topic for 30 seconds. Is that training? No, it's learning, and that's what we're here to do, is to help people learn. So that's what we're aiming for. So we just want to help bridge that gap, make it feel more familiar to the way they learn at home.
Can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
To that? And I think when you talked about is how learning is changing with, for instance, the advances of technology. And I was actually, we're looking at this in our tech organization. So we have about 9,000 people, software engineers, who are creating and managing the apps that you use, Venmo and PayPal, and they're getting into agentic commerce. I mean, there's so much that we're doing that's on the cusp of things. And I was in a meeting the other day because we need to completely transform the way our tech learning is happening. And someone said something that stuck out to me: there is no more business as usual. So when I grew up in the training and learning function, you would create something, you would implement it, you would roll it through everybody in about 2 years, and then we would create something else and we would implement it. And they said quarterly, because things are changing, there is no business as usual. This is our new tech new joiner program. It is going to be, we have to look at this content quarterly. So that means we can't be heavy on instructional design. We can't be heavy on building our own content. We have to be super agile on where we're finding things. Where do we find the expertise that is out there in the business, and start to get that content from these experts. You couldn't have a training team large enough to keep up with the changes that are happening. So it's really causing a lot of us old people to rethink things that we knew as fact. And it's exciting, and it's fun, but if we don't do it, there's massive repercussions for our organization. So we really have to transform that thinking.
I wanted to ask about AI, but I feel like we have another hour. We'd need another hour to discuss all about it. Because a yes or no question for everyone. AI is changing all of this, right?
Yeah.
100%.
No.
Apparently, not in Cincinnati.
It's actually more legitimate than you can probably imagine, but someone's got to be the antagonist.
I do want to talk about what not to do. I feel like this is a fun question. And we can start with whoever wants to go. What are some of the worst and preventable mistakes that companies make when it comes to employee experience? You could share some fun stories if you wanted. Yes?
I have one just to kick off, and this is more of a, experience tends to be this HR thing, or perceived as this HR thing, and yet the reality, we just heard a lot of it from Emily and Joe, is it's actually about removing friction from the system, and from what our leaders have to do, our team members have to do, make it easier, make it less, just burdensome. We had a speaking of learning, and I love what I heard Joe say, is it's not the watching, it's not the reading, it's the doing that's actually learning, which is really insightful. But we have a challenge within TriHealth as a system. This is not actually foreign to health systems, hospital systems. Unless you're an academic medical center, you really don't. It's not really a learning culture unless you're actually in the clinical spaces. It's very much we do it the way we do it, and we're going to continue to do it the way that we do it. And so we're really trying to get the system to understand that the importance of being a learning environment is really key. But when we asked in our leadership model, which is 2 parts, run your business and lead and grow your people, we need more content on the run your business. And the data team said, hey, we want to do data literacy, and we've got these great ideas. And they came back with 13 hours of in-person training. It was this epiphany of that's not how people learn. It's not scalable. And so I think my punchline is recognizing that experience, really, if we really want to get good at it, we have to scale it. It's not just a COE that sits in the room and just does stuff and owns stuff. You've got to be able to scale it and institutionalize the skill. But it's really removing friction. Like, how do we just make things simpler? Not just new stuff for the sake of new stuff, but how do we just do things simpler?
I would completely echo that, even though that puts me out of a job. But I would
No, it doesn't.
We won't tell anyone.
I agree. I think having it centralized, it makes people feel like experience is owned by a single team. And to David's point, it is not. It sits everywhere. And the biggest mistake is assuming that one team is the only one that can fix it and solve it.
That's the point.
Right. I got what you were saying, even though it does put me out of a job.
It elevates your job.
We've been arguing that our framework is that everyone owns experience, and experience is listening, insights, and then driving action. And so we made it very simple so that any leader can take the same framework and go fix an experience by doing the listening, getting the insights, and driving action. And that's been our motto. It's like, we don't own it. We just help you enable it.
I think maybe to add to that a little bit too, right, is like I think we've all heard the cliche of like people don't leave companies, they leave managers, right? And I think when we're thinking about who really owns experience, although everybody owns experience, I do find that probably the what not to do is not coaching your leaders on how do you onboard and bring a new hire into your organization. I think when you were giving your intro earlier about the number of roles compared to your total headcount, I can imagine that every single one of those roles was extremely critical, that by the time they got onboarded, it was probably like drinking from a fire hose. Let's hurry up and get this person, ready and steady to go so that they can make an impact, and kind of forgetting through like what is the learning curve for humans, right? And, for the companies I've been with, I find that we do a lot better with retaining with employee experience when we focus on the relationship building first and then what they do later, right? They're all going to stink at their jobs when they first come in. No matter if you're shifting a job, because it's the first one you've ever taken, or you've been working for 20 years and you've decided to take a path into a different direction, you're not going to be good at the what yet. But you can be good at the what if you learn the who within your organization. So focus on that first. Make sure that your leader knows that, because the worst thing you can do is have your new hire drink from a fire hose of what it is that they're going to have to accomplish by the end of the year. So.
Well, do you guys see a difference between your older employees and your younger employees when it comes to onboarding? Like you're talking about people leave managers and not companies kind of idea. Do you feel like you have to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like designate certain trainings for certain generations, or is it all one, you can do everything all together? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, me? Oh, good. I think the short answer is no, not specifically, right? Like what we want to do is provide options based on learning styles rather than, demographics. And feedback that we've gotten is actually, that's appreciated. Like that's, the content is the content, but the way that they want to consume it should be their prerogative. And I think we have a really massive responsibility to acknowledge that. And I think as we spend a lot of time talking about, inclusiveness and the diversity of our teams. The diversity of our teams isn't just a demographic, or it's also the learning styles, which is, it takes a lot of really concentrated effort to make that a reality. So if any one training, we're doing it 3 different ways, that's a hard sell back to, executives. But for us, it's like, that's a learner first approach. So if the results are what the results are, if we're hitting the learning objectives that we set out, who cares how we get there? We should be putting people first in that regard, because they're the ones who are going to take what we're asking them to learn and delivering it for the organization. So why would people who never really would take the training care too much about it? But we have to care about it because we're responsible for their experience.
Well, and we only have 4 minutes left, so I wanted to make sure that everyone said everything they wanted to say. What should I have asked? Do you have anything to add? I have more questions, but I wanted to give you a chance.
I'll go back to the question you asked earlier, because I was really thinking about it when you said, what is your bad employee experience?
Yeah.
And I really think, as I was once again sitting here thinking about it, I can't pinpoint one, but I think it's the opposite of the good. It's when I felt like I didn't belong, when I was sitting in a meeting and maybe there wasn't a chair for me and I had to go find a chair and bring it in, like physically didn't belong. Or when I was talked over, or when I said an idea and somebody then took credit for the idea. Like that feeling of not being seen, like that is a really crappy way to feel. And I think sometimes so it has nothing to do with onboarding and nothing to do with gifts or swag or anything. But I think that we underestimate how the way we make our employees feel is so important, at least for me, is so important to feeling like I fit in this company and I'm adding value and I want to continue to come back and continue to add value. And that's a real driver for me.
Well, it's funny that we learned that in kindergarten too.
Yeah.
Just to listen to others and be kind and don't talk over other people.
Yeah, that's it. That's the secret.
Yeah, that's the secret. Okay, so if you went to kindergarten, you should be good to go. But yeah, do you guys have anything to add to that? I can toss another question in here. We can do a lightning round or something.
Ooh, lightning.
Let's do a lightning.
Lightning
Okay,
round.
okay. Well, it's kind of a long. Okay, we got it. Okay, once you've listened well and made improvements in employee experience, how do you communicate those developments to your colleagues who are in like talent acquisition and recruiting? Not very lightning fast.
I'm struggling. Like I send it to
Sorry, wait. I can find another one.
You gotta communicate
for
the
us, we have-
story. So, go ahead.
Nope.
Go ahead.
No,
All
you
right.
started. Go ahead.
Like lightning speed, right? It's, when you make an improvement, you gotta make sure you're delivering it to those who are gonna benefit in the form of a story. So you can be very clear, like, here's where we started, here's the feedback that we got, here's what we've implemented, and here's how it's better. Come with data for some leaders, not data for everybody. Not everybody wants to hear numbers, but I do find that depending on which groups you're focusing on, if they're a numbers group, give them the numbers. Be like, hey, we've cut time out of this process by 30 minutes or 2 days or whatever the case might be, and show how that was demonstrated through the collaboration across the board so that you could make this happen in the first place. Storytelling is super underrated. I find that a lot of companies don't do it well. Or overlook it because they're like, hey, they just care about the change. And I'm like, they do care about the change, but if they don't have something to compare it to, that change might just be, here's something new that we now have to do.
100%. So and storytelling is all about the why. Like, and if you can emotionally connect to the why, the rest of it's kind of the easy part. For us, from an HR perspective, whenever I joined and kind of started moving the organization, we launched a formula which was more, better, faster. And it was just really around, what we needed to do to move the organization forward, reconnect to the business. And it's more of the right work, not just more of the right work, better through continuous improvement. So we're relentlessly thinking about operational excellence, but how do we make this better? I love to tinker. We should all tinker and continue to think. And then faster is just a sense of urgency. And so I think the real-time feedback to say, okay, this is the theme, this is what's happening, this is what's coming from our listening, whatever the channel may be, what do we do with it? Validate it. Is it legitimate? Is it real? Is it connected to a pain point? Is there a low lift, high value? And then we move. Progress over perfection. We're not looking for exactly right. But.
Well, and it's bringing those partners along the journey with you. So it shouldn't be where you just at the last minute throw them the data and say, here you go. How do you make sure that you're bringing them along the journey when you're getting the insights, when you're building the problem statements, and that they're a part of those conversations so that they're building that story with you and they have a seat at the table?
All right, 5 seconds to go. William, what's your hair care routine?
I wash it.
Most important.
Just
I wash
kidding.
it.
Thank y'all so much. I feel like this is a good panel.